the Most High blessed him, Argentina possesses a large amount of beef. The cattle industry in Argentina.
Okay, so now we're going back to Genesis 49 and we're going to deal with Joseph.
Right.
Okay, which became Ephraim. You can expound on that.
Now we're going to deal with the tribe of Joseph, which represents also the tribe of Ephraim and Manasseh. And to show that scripture real quickly, go to Numbers 132. It says, of the children of Joseph, name the children of Ephraim by their generations. So Ephraim took the posterity of his father Joseph, but the name was still there. So let's read Genesis 49.
Right, real quick. In Genesis 48, when the blessing was to come on Joseph, he asked his father to give it to his sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. So Ephraim was the younger boy, Manasseh was the older. You can read the story on your own. So the greater blessing was put on Ephraim. It tells you that Jacob crossed his hands like so, and put his right hand on the younger boy and his left hand on the older boy, and put the blessings on him. So read Genesis 48 to get the history behind that. So now, we're going to speed up because we're running short of time. So we're in Genesis 49 and 22. Joseph is a fruitful bow.
So it said Joseph is a fruitful bow, meaning his posterity, Ephraim is fruitful. They have a lot of children, their offspring. Read on.
Even a fruitful bow by a well.
So it's showing you even when you plant a bough by a well, it becomes very fruitful. It produces a lot of fruits. Anything that's planted next to rivers of water or a well, it becomes very productive. Read on.
Whose branches run over the wall.
Now it says whose branches run over the wall. When the Puerto Ricans was over here in the islands and the Spaniards came and conquered them, their daughters married into the family of the Spaniards. So that's when it says their branches ran over the wall. They went out of their family line and went over into the Spaniards. Let's put it in the scripture in Hosea, the 4th chapter and the 17th verse. Because it's going to explain to you about Ephraim, what Ephraim did and what happened to Ephraim when the Spaniards came and conquered the island of Puerto Rico. Hosea, the 4th chapter and the 17th verse explains what happened to Ephraim.
Let me go to Hosea chapter 7 and verse 8.
Right, that's right.
It says, Ephraim, he hath mixed himself among the people.
Right, some of them, not all of them. Some of them have mixed themselves amongst the people, which were the Spaniards. Read on.
Ephraim is a cake not turned.
So it says Ephraim is like a cake not turned. Now let me give you an example of a cake. When you have a cake that's one part is well done, and when you turn the other side over, it's not fully done. It's like a yellowish color. So that's what it's referring to. Ephraim is like a cake not done. He's like a light complexion. Light. Not real dark no more. He's light. Read on. There's more to that?
No, that was it.
Okay.
Okay, so now let me go back to that. It says, Joseph is a fruitful bow, even a fruitful bow by a well, whose branches run over the wall. I wanted to say something concerning that over the wall. In Puerto Rico, they have a giant wall that's called El Muro, that the Spanish built to keep the other invading whites out. Okay, so now that's exactly what the scripture is talking about, but it lets you know that the women of Puerto Rico, the Boricua Indians, they went over that wall and started dealing with the Spaniard whites, okay? And then they had children, and those children went back and dealt with the true Boricuas, okay, and had offspring. That brought about the change in the complexion of their skin.
Right.
Okay, so I'll read on. The archers have sorely grieved him.
And the archers that sorely grieved the Puerto Rican Indians, the Taino and the Boricua and so forth, was the Spaniards. They hated them. They butchered and massacred them. Read on.
And shot at him and hated him.
And they shot at them with the guns. And they hated the so-called Puerto Ricans. So this was one example of the hatred that was displayed towards the Boricua and the Taino Indians by the Spaniards. So now, when you read further in Genesis 49, it gives a history of Joseph. So from there, we're going to go to Deuteronomy, the 33rd chapter and the 13th verse.
And of Joseph he said, Blessed of the Lord be his land, for the precious things of heaven.
So now the Most High is telling about the land of Ephraim, the Puerto Ricans, for the blessing of the land, and for the precious things of heaven, the sun, the moon, the good climate, the temperature, and all the beautiful fruits and so forth that grows in the island. Read on.
For the dew and for the deep that coucheth beneath.
And the dew, in the morning you see the dew upon the grass. The dew is what helps crops to grow good in the morning too. Read on, and it says, for the deep that coucheth beneath is the beautiful seas, the tropical climate, and the blue seas. Read on.
And for the precious fruits brought forth by the sun.
And the precious fruits brought forth by the sun, the pineapple, the mangoes, all the Goya products, all the beautiful precious fruits that grows in the island of Puerto Rico and Cuba. Read on.
And for the precious things put forth by the moon.
And the precious things put forth by the moon. When the moon comes out at night in Puerto Rico, this is the only unique thing that what is called a frog or a coquille, that lives in the island of Puerto Rico that comes out at night time. And this frog, is proven by scientists, it only lives in Puerto Rico. When you take this frog and place him any place else, it will automatically die. And this coquille at night makes a particular sound, goes.
Right.
So that's the son of precious things put forth by the moon, and it also represents the vegetation and the fruits. Read on.
Verse 15. And for the chief things of the ancient mountains, and for the precious things of the lasting hills.
Explain that.
This is making reference to all the beautiful and wonderful vegetation that's within the hills and the mountains of Boriqueño. Okay, also I wanted to bring out the word Boricua. It does not mean Puerto Rico, not to get off the topic. Boricua means brave, noble lords. It's an ancient word, okay, an ancient Hebrew word, because we have already proved to you that all the so-called Indians throughout the Americas and the islands spoke Hebrew. Okay, we brought it out also in Lost Tribes in the Promised Lands that the children of Joseph, the tribe of Joseph, lived on an island nearby, okay, which were the so-called Puerto Ricans and the so-called Cubans. Okay, verse 16.
And also too in that same verse, for the chief things of the Asian mountains, coffee grows in the mountains too. And some of the Indians hid some of their treasures in the mountains when the Spaniards came and conquered them. So some of the riches were still hidden in the mountains of Puerto Rico, like in the Junque, the jungle, in the area parts. Reading on.
Verse 16. And for the precious things of the earth and fullness thereof.
Speaking about the vegetation, the fruits, and so forth. Read on.
And for the goodwill of him that dwelt in the bush.
And also it says the precious things of the earth means a good soil. They have good soil for planting. Read on.
And for the goodwill of him that dwelt in the bush.
And for the good, you could elaborate on that part. For the goodwill of him that dwelt in the bush.
Meaning, this is going back into history. When Moses went up on Mount Sinai, who dwelt in the bush? The Most High. Okay, the spirit of the Most High was in there. So all the blessings that came upon Joseph and his children, Ephraim and Manasseh, was according to the will of the Most High. Okay, let the blessing come upon the head of Joseph, and upon the top of the head of him that was separated from his brethren.
So all this blessing came upon Joseph, which was the father of Ephraim and Manasseh, when he was separated to Egypt. Read on.
His glory is like the firstling of his bullock.
So his strength, the strength of Ephraim coming from his father Joseph. Read on.
And his horns are like the horns of unicorns.
And the horn represents his power, his strength, that Ephraim became a valiant warrior amongst the tribes of Israel when the nation was split. Reading on.
With them he shall push the people together to the ends of the earth.
So Ephraim was the one that pushed and brought the rest of the tribes over here, because when the nation was split, Ephraim became the principal leader over the northern kingdom. So Ephraim brought the tribes over here along with all the rest of the tribes of Israel. Read on.
And they are the 10,000s of Ephraim, and they are the thousands of Manasseh.
So it's showing you about Manasseh, which are the Cuban Indians, the Saboni Indians.
Right. Let me say this. When we read in the Apocrypha, in the book of Esdras, about how the tribes came over here, this is explaining to you, it was the tribe of Ephraim that led them, with Manasseh. Okay, they led the tribes over here. And if you notice in here, it keeps mentioning, it says precious fruits, precious things of the earth, and the precious things in the sea. The national anthem of Puerto Rico is called Precious. Okay, and that's not a coincidence.
Right. And then also in Cuba too, Cuba produces a lot of sugar cane. It produces coffee, tobacco. Cuba is a rich producing country too.
Right.
One time Cuba was a very large producing country. It produced sugar cane to the Western world.
Let's go to Hosea chapter 4 verse 17. Okay. It says, Ephraim is joined to idols, meaning the so-called Boricua Indians, you are joined to idols, meaning you love idol worship. You got idols on your dashboards in your car, you got a shrine of idols in your house, you got the on your what?
In your body tattoos.
Tattoos on your bodies, you got that fake image of Christ. everywhere. And if somebody tries to tell you about it, you say that they're dead wrong. So the scripture says, if you can't get rid of them idols, us, the prophets, the teachers, we are to leave you alone. Okay, so now it's not just Ephraim that's joined the idols. When it says Ephraim, you are the top tribe, because the Dominicans are on that, the Mexicans, and so on and so on. You Latino tribes. Okay, when we have